Hello everybody, Realm Builder Guy here, and welcome back to another Crusader Kings 3 guide. This is part 2 of my military guide to CK3, and today we will be focusing on combat and wars. First of all, I want to thank everybody that's been liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff, especially on part 1 of this guide. It really means a lot. It helps, so if we could get another, let's go for 100, 150 likes on this video, that would be fantastic because it'll continue to help generate more views and help grow the channel, really, which is something, at this point, definitely still definitely need. So anyway, before we get into this, I also want to let you know there are links down in the description where you can check out the Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon as well. And thank you for everybody that's been supporting over there. So, like I mentioned in this part 2, we're going to talk about combat and wars. First thing we're going to go is straight into combat. And I have picked a particularly bad fight here just to kind of show you different core game mechanics. Now, the game is paused, so, there's a large force coming here, and we're going to get absolutely crushed. But that really doesn't matter. That's not what this is about. What this is about is kind of showing you a few different things about combat. Now, first of all, combat width. Now, combat width is determined by how many troops can engage at once and is determined by the terrain you're in. Now, we're in the plains, so combat width, as you can see right here, 100%. There are terrains. There is terrain. That's better English. That's actual English. That does limit combat width. These are especially in mountains, wetlands, and jungles. They're the best at limiting combat width by 50%, as an example in a few of those. So if you are a smaller army, then fighting in those types of terrain really help because it limits the amount of troops that your enemy can field at a given time. Whereas here in the plains, it's 100%. So there are 4 phases of combat. You can see them right down here. Now, we are currently in the maneuver phase, so it's really early on. So the initial advantage rolls. Let me just forward that real quick, and boom. There we can see we've gone through the maneuver phase. We are now in the early battle phase. This is where you inflict damage and nobody can retreat. Well, let's take a quick look what we have here. So, the attacker, your commander, has an advantage of 21 because of a martial skill of plus 21. The defender has martial skill of 16, so they have the advantage there. Plus 3 advantage is in our favor, so damage increase by 6%. Now, right now, we still have more troops, but, there's another 3,100 coming in here, so that's going to change dramatically. The nice thing is you can see here are your current rolls, as well as how things are stacked up in terms of troops. We've got 8 knights, they have 4 knights. They have pikemen that are countering our light horsemen. You can see that. And then they have bowmen. They're countered by the light horsemen, but they are countering the light footmen. And the light footmen are countered by the bowmen. The bowmen are countered by nobody, and the pikemen are countered by nobody. So that just gives you some advantages or disadvantages, some modifiers, as it were. So after you go through the early battle phase, then you go to the late battle phase. This is where damage is inflicted until one side runs out of toughness or retreats. And after that, you have the aftermath. This is when the winning army inflicts damage on routed army. Defeated army flees to a few baronies away. So if you've lost a battle, you can see your troops are just going on a big runabout until they finally get back together, reinforce, and then you can go back into battle. Now, there are different modifiers that do affect this. So they affect the advantage rolls and damage. Modifiers come from traits, commander's martial skill, as you saw here. The traits you have here is siege time phase is an advantage him. He has fatal casualties, minus 25% as an unyielding defender. So that all comes into play. Buildings and or terrain have the effect as well. Now, there are some key things that you can actually control when you are attacking specifically or defending. You can strategically place yourself. Now, buildings you can't affect in those moments or anything like that. But when you're defending across a strait, a large river, or a, medium-sized river, that gives an advantage to the defender. The liege leading the army gives an advantage. If the realm is in debt, that gives a huge disadvantage to one side. Supply levels, we already talked about in part 1, that I will link at the top here, where supply has severe negative modifiers. So if you're low or no supply, you're attacking across the sea and defending in mountains, jungle, hills, wetlands, taiga, and forest. The next aspect of combat you need to keep an eye on is, of course, sieges. Now, I had mentioned this previously. Let me just get out here a little bit. That you should always have siege equipment as part of your men-at-arms. They are key, the key way to win wars. Now, obviously, if you defeat, just stack wipe the opponents because you're just that much bigger, well, you know, that definitely helps a lot. But sieges are a key way to win wars, and I kind of talked about a strategy that I used with Brittany against a significantly larger foe. They are impacted by commander traits, siege weapons, fort levels, and garrison sizes. If you are attacked whilst besieging, all defensive terrain modifiers go to the attacker. So if the attacker is attacking you while you're sieging in the mountains, then that defensive terrain modifier goes to the advantage of the attacker in that sense. So, you know, you got to be a little bit aware of that, even though you don't get attacked too often when you're besieging, but it does happen. I mean, I haven't seen it too often, but I try not to get into sieges where I have to deal with an enemy army too often. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is, of course, warfare itself and general wars. So combat is at the micro level, wars are the macro level. Now, the first thing you need is a casus belli or casus belli, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So that literally translates to cause for war. So let's also just call it a CB, which is needed to conquer lands. Now, we've got the ability to declare war on Henry II, because we have de jure counties in the realm here. So we could go after that. We've got claims. We could go after that, or somebody else's claims. So we have a built-in casus belli. Now, these are conquerable lands, are determined by the objective. War score is based on the objective of the battle. You can see war score down here listed. CBs can be anything from pressing claims, seizure on de jure counties, as you saw right there, independence war, as well as just a general war of conquest, and of course, holy wars. Declaring offensive wars cost prestige, while holy wars cost piety. So again, prestige to me is one of the most important resources in the game, and you see it there. Now, if you don't have a casus belli, you can, of course, fabricate claims on a county. And the way you do that, you go to your council and you go to your archbishop and you click on fabricate claim, and then you pick somewhere to fabricate a claim on. He gets to working on that. When that's done, it'll cost you gold, and the county or the ruler upon whose land you are fabricating a claim, well, his opinion gets a negative towards you, obviously, because you're saying that's my land, and it's like, no, it's my land. So got to keep that in mind as well. So when it comes to war, so you say you have a CB now and it's time to go to war. Now what you need to do is raise an army, and you can see here, raise all armies. Now, you don't have to raise all armies. You could just raise local armies or all armies. The other thing you can do is move this rally point, and you can even set multiple rally points. I've done setting multiple rally points, but then it comes down to a little bit too much micromanagement as, okay, I want this force to be rallied here and this force to be rallied there. I tend to just work with one and move it, so you can move your rally point here. Say we want to wage war up in the north. Having a rally point all the way down here just doesn't make sense. What you can do is place one up here. So once your army is raised fully, you just have a quick attack. You know, you're already there. Alternatively, you could actually take a look at this and say, let's move the rally point to right here. So we'll raise here, but say we want to fight here, we have a river to cross. So if anybody comes after us, We have a river protecting us. Again, you have that, and this is a major river, so of course you do have some major modifiers to your advantage, or you can even say a little raise in Rouen, because there you have a higher fort level and a garrison and so on. So be very strategic where you place those rally points. They are not static. You can move those around anywhere you want, and you can also create multiple rally points if you so choose. One in the south, one in the north, depending on how you want to do things. That way you don't ever have to really think about it. But honestly, it's not that much work to just move that one just before you declare war or when war gets declared upon you. It's not a lot of work. It saves you some time in the sense of you don't have to split your forces or figure out where you want what raised. This is your central rally point. Everybody gets raised there, and that is also where your mercenaries will then show up. So keep that in mind as well. Now, the other thing you have to bear in mind is you go to war and you can call allies. Now, in an offensive war, it will cost you prestige to call in your allies. So really think about whether you need your allies. Now, if this is a major war against a major foe, well, calling in your allies, especially if they're close enough to have an effect on the outcome of battle, is really important, and I would always recommend it, even if it knocks your prestige way down. But if you don't really need it, if you're dealing with a middling foe, then don't worry about it. Save the prestige for later and take care of it yourself. You can always call them in later if things turn out to not be working in your favor. So now you've gone through the war and you're at the end of the war. Now, the end of a war is determined by this little thing down here, which is your war score, from 0 to 100 or minus 100, depending on which way you go. If it's green, it's nice. It's in your advantage. If it's in the red, well, yeah, that's never good. Red is just not a good color. It really isn't. So that determines your war score. Now, you can surrender at any point. I had a war here with Brittany where I surrendered to France pretty early on and conceded a county that a troublesome count held. It was not part of our holdings. And I was like, you know what? If that gets France off my back, and one of my vassals, who's a real problem for me, gets weaker, I'm okay with it. I don't get a ton of money out of it. It really didn't hurt my tax base. So I did it because I knew the French would roll us anyway. Before I lose more troops, I did that. Plus, then I had a different troublesome vassal declare a rebellion against us, so I figured we'll shut down France right away, give them what they want. It's just a county that didn't mean much to me. And then we rolled the rebels and executed them because that's what you need to do. So anyway, white peace can be offered really at any time, but both sides must agree in order for it to be finalized. I've only really seen white peace work if a war just drags on forever. Other than that, very rare. Now, victory or enforcing your demands as the victor can only occur at 100% war score. Now, before you click enforce demands, if you have any prisoners, just ransom them real quick, confirm it all, and then enforce demands. And that way you get the benefits of both sides, so you don't lose any prisoners. So after the war, you're as the attacker, you have a truce for 5 years. Now you can break the truce, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's going to cost you a chunk of prestige, but an entire level of fame, and minus 50 general opinion for 3 years across the world. So just don't break truces. It's not worth it unless you're extraordinarily desperate or extraordinarily powerful that you don't care. Just stick to the truces. So there's another type of war that you can have, and that is, of course, raiding and looting. These are great ways to get gold. Now, raiding targets a specific holding and is only available to unreformed pagan religion or tribal nations. Now, a holding can only be raided once every 5 years. During that 5-year span where you cannot raid, the holding has minus 50% taxes, plus 50% construction time, and minus 10% development growth. Now, to get all the gold, you cannot break the raid on a holding. So you're sitting on, say, Mayenne right here. Let's scroll in here. So you're sitting on there, and you have to hold it until it's done, kind of like a siege. Now, the raided realm can muster troops to fight against raiders, and you are stationary. If you break it off before it's done, you get no cash. Now, you get the cash once you've then left and you're back in your home territory, then it goes into your treasury. Commanders who have raided 20 times get the raider trait. So that's a lot of fun, actually. Now, looting is different than raiding. It basically has the same core mechanic, but this is if you're in war. So say we're here at war with Hungary. Let's scroll out here. And we come down here, and all the Hungarian soldiers are up north, and we decide to slide in down here in the south. Now, we can say that we want to siege down all of these different holdings. Now, if you click on the holdings, you can see down here is a number that says loot 28, loot 25, loot 23, loot 17. This is a great way, and it's the same way, and this is loot 3. So you're only going to get 3 gold from here, but you're going to get 28 from here. So this is, you can also take a look at that when you're raiding. If you want to pick your target, just click on the individual holding and it'll show you how much loot is available. And then you can strategically pick who you're going to raid in. The same here in war. I can say, oh, we're going to come in here from the south and we're going to go after Egershek down here in Hungary. We're going to get 28 when we get that all siege down the county, and here we're going to get 28. And then once the siege is done, you have control of the county, then yeah, you get the cash in your treasury. Unlike raiding, where you first have to go back home and then it shows up in your treasury. So if you are allied and you get called into a war, yeah, you can help your ally out, but it's a great way. If you don't really care that much, it's a great way to kind of ravage the land and make a lot of money. The Hungarians are fighting all up here in the north. Maybe you just slip down here in the south and just start burning and pillaging down here. And even if your army gets defeated, you get all that gold. It's still in your treasury, assuming that you've sieged it all the way down. So be strategic, stay out of the main fight if you choose to, and that way you can make a lot of money actually being in somebody else's war. So the next thing I want to talk about is timing your wars. Very, very important. It's very important to be strategic about when you decide to go to war. A key aspect is this timing of your target and picking the best terrain to engage them, especially if you're picking a stronger target. Now, if I look here at Brittany, now we were first a duchy, and William conquered England, and he was extremely powerful. Well, William died, then his son inherited, and then his son died without heirs, and then it became Danelaw, and then that guy died without heirs, and then it came to Denmark. Denmark was in wars all across Scandinavia, and so they were really weak. They had no allies. They had 850 troops, and we had about 3,000. And we had a claim on Normandy. So I decided that was the perfect timing to press that claim and conquer Normandy. We did that. We got it all in, and here you can see we were able to declare the Kingdom of Brittany shortly afterwards. So timing your war is very important. Be patient. One of the things, and I'm guilty of this as well, especially early on when CK3 came out, was to just go headlong into war again and again and again, and you can get pummeled that way. So be very strategic, be a little patient, take that time, invest in your holdings, and develop your counties, and then just wait. And once the time is right, strike hard, strike lethally, and then you can win a few more wars that way. If you're OP, then it almost doesn't matter, honestly. If you're just so powerful you can roll anybody, timing is not that important. But if you're kind of level, picking and choosing when the right time, and it could take a generation or two, but being strategic is very important. Study your opposition military forces as well. So if you look at, let's look at France here for an example. They have 6,700. We have 4,000 troops. You can see we've got, our allies have 7,500. And you can see also your potential target, how many levies they have, how many levies their allies have, how many knights, as well as their men-at-arms regiments. And this way you can quickly analyze whether or not this war is worth it, what your chances are of winning, and you can also build your men-at-arms regiments to counter them. Say you're dealing with a heavy cav enemy, bring in pikemen. Or say your opposition has no cavalry, a lot of archers, no pikemen, then invest in cavalry. That gives you so many advantages. The other thing you want to do, of course, is check alliances. Who are they allied with? What are their allies dealing with? So these guys have the Byzantine Empire. Well, the Byzantines, of course, they're pretty strong, 17,000. Are they in the middle of a war? If allies, even powerful allies, are in the middle of a war, then there's a good chance they may not come to your enemy's aid. So analyze the alliances, as well as, of course, your own, and see when they might be preoccupied in another war. So if France is maybe at war with the HRE and England, and it's a big war, and you're not involved with it, that might be a good time to go in here because they've preoccupied or their military strength is run down. But you got to keep an eye on the war score then of whoever is. Let's see if we can find. Here we go. So you can see Wessex is in a war with Northumbria, and you can see plus 73%. It's looking pretty good that they could win that war. So if you're saying, hey, you know, Wessex or Northumbria war, I want to declare war on one of them because they're dealing with another one. Well, if they, basically end that war, then they can turn their entire might against you. So if it's still early in a war, so maybe 0%, then might be a good time to strike. If it's late in a war, that's a bit too much of a risk. So that's it here for combat in war. This one was significantly shorter, or not significantly, but it was a little bit shorter than the previous one, I think. Checking the timer. Yeah, let's call it shorter. I hope it helped you. I hope this two-part guide to the military was beneficial to your play and enjoyment of Crusader Kings 3. Let me know down in the description if there are any other game mechanic topics you'd like to see covered in a guide. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you're new, and until next time, I'm Realm Builder Guy, and I will talk to you soon.